Okay, so we're switching gears now. We are all about profession. Then I have the pleasure to welcome William Max,
Yep.
who is gracious enough to come here today and tell us about what he does. So MaxNetflow is a company, your company,
hmm
and what's the purpose of what the workflow in it for an idea of?
Well, really, the idea of MaxNetflow is to make sure that people's IT and their networks are functioning as smoothly as possible, right? So it's like network and flow, right?
Oh,
So we
so it's
just we just want it
flowing.
to
It's
work,
flowing.
right? We just want it to work. We don't want people to worry about it. And one of the focuses on the company is actually
Yeah.
automation. That's
Yeah.
really part of the flow, right?
Yeah.
You automate things, and it just works.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. So MaxNetflow though is a special company. I mean, you must have a special structure to it that's different from the others.
Yeah, I would say what's different about us is we really focus on the cutting edge of technologies. So
Yeah.
there are some IT buzzwords right now, right? AI, machine learning, automation, all those things. Those are places where most firms are afraid of going, but that's exactly where we live. So when it comes to bringing those cutting edge technologies to the customer, that's where we separate ourselves. And it's a very interesting space because, as you probably know, AI and machine learning to a lesser extent is kind of entering the political arena as people start to worry about automation taking away jobs and things like that.
Okay. So what are those new technology that you picked up on and that you implemented in your company?
Well, one of them, this one's a little bit niche technical within networking, but it's called software defined wide area networks.
All right.
Now, what that basically is, to kind of take it away from the technical terms, I have an engineering background, so I have to be careful when I talk about this stuff, not to just
Oh.
say, all these different technology acronyms. But software defined wide area networking is basically a way to make sure that when companies are going out to the internet,
Mm-hmm.
it's highly reliable,
Mm-hmm.
and we can set criteria that says data will take specific pathways through
Mm-hmm.
the internet
Yeah.
to make sure that it performs as effectively as possible.
Okay.
So people are used to having Comcast or AT&T or some of these other big providers, and they go out to the internet directly. If that thing's having problems, their data's having problems, right?
Oh, okay.
Part of what makes it seamless in the automation is we can switch that around
Yeah.
and make sure that it takes the optimal path
Yeah.
so it flows smoothly. So
That's good. That's
yeah.
good. But you kind of have some new equipment, or is it new engineering?
So what's really interesting with SD-WAN, for example, is that it can be on completely independent hardware, and
Yeah.
it can be completely independent software. It can come together, right? So
Okay.
most people are used to buying, like when you buy a computer, it usually comes with the software loaded.
Of course.
Sometimes with the networking equipment, what we can do is we can buy it's basically a computer in a box, and
Yeah.
then we can put whatever type of software we want on top of it.
Okay.
So
So the difference lies in the software you have picked.
big difference lies in the software. Yeah, and we'll use SD-WAN as an example again. There's over 30 different SD-WAN vendors out there. They all do it a little bit differently, and it's cutting edge enough where there's no strict, I guess you'd say, definition on what exactly it is. So you have a lot of people coming in saying that they're providing, and they're not really providing it. They're really providing something else, but they're trying to catch on the buzzword.
All right.
Um,
All right. So you picked maybe the most efficient one, I would
yes,
say.
so we'll do it really specific for specific customers.
Okay.
Now, one of the problems with it
Is it
is,
customized then?
yeah, so we customize it for specific customers, and one of the
And
big problems.
you have the right to modify that software for the customer?
Yeah, not only do we have the right, the SD-WAN software providers, they want us to
They
do it
want
because,
you to customize it. Okay.
look, we have a certain level of trust with those vendors, and
Of course.
if we can modify it and make the customer happy, they're like, yeah,
Yeah,
do it,
go
right?
for it. Go for it.
Because SD-WAN is very complicated. That's sort of the point of the firm, is we work on these really complicated technologies that are very rewarding,
Yeah.
but it's very difficult to implement, especially for the typical engineer whose job is just to kind of keep things running,
Mm-hmm.
and their job's not to stay on the cutting edge like that. I mean, we brought it up earlier, 30 plus SD-WAN vendors. It's tough to keep up with exactly what's going on with all 30 something of those vendors.
So what you do? You took time to examine each and every one of them, see which one
Yeah.
would fit your company.
Yeah, and we speak regularly with those vendors.
Oh,
So
okay.
not only do we talk with the salespeople, we talk with the executives at those
And the
companies
engineers, okay.
and the engineers, because that's important. Because when we
Because you're
talk
an
to the
engineer.
yeah, so when you're talking in engineering terms versus sales terms, not to
It's different.
right, not to knock salespeople, but when you're talking to engineers, it's very hard to hide the truth because it's much more scientific, right?
Oh.
So when they're telling you how it works from a technical perspective,
You understand.
you know the truth.
So you used to be a software developer kind of person?
I used to be a network engineer, and I did that for quite a few years. I actually traveled around the United States doing that before I had my company.
Okay.
I lived
So
in
you
Atlanta,
were
Denver, all over
able
the
to
place.
look at different kind of networks?
Yeah, all kinds of different networks. We worked for
Big
Fortune
ones, small
500,
ones?
Fortune 100, Fortune 10, payment processing, big oil companies, large retail firms.
Wow.
You
That's
name
on
it.
your website?
Yeah,
In some ways.
it's more my experience and the experience of the engineers that are working for me that
Yeah.
we've worked on just about everything.
So now you're able to contact these people that you have worked for in the past as a contractor, or
Yeah.
you're not, or
So-
you do.
We can bring them in, and that's really been one of the things that's been very valuable
Because you met them before.
well, and there has to be a high trust level because these types of engineers that we're talking about having work on these technologies,
Yeah.
they're very picky because they're very good. So if they don't have a high
Oh.
trust level in you and they
Oh.
don't think that you're going to take care of them and really accelerate their career and help them,
Okay.
because and really an employer in any field should be doing that. They should be trying to help their employee be better.
Okay.
But if the engineer doesn't believe it, they're
So
not going to
because
come.
they met you before, they have a level of trust for you.
Yeah, yeah, they know how I operate. I'm pretty loose with letting the engineers kind of do what they're best at while they're best at it, and then I can just sort of facilitate their growth in areas where they're not so good.
So with the kind of company you have, do you have to be in person locally to look at their system and decide what to do?
So it'll depend. If they're doing something really advanced like SD-WAN,
Yeah.
we don't really need to be on site, but if we can log into their equipment and get some diagrams, things like that,
Oh.
that's all we really need.
You can do
right?
that remotely?
Yeah, yep. And again, that's another trust factor thing, right? They have to trust you to log into their equipment and
Oh, wow, because
be confident you're not going to do anything.
There's so much passwords
Yeah.
and so many things confidential. and
Right, yep.
So because they trust you, they've seen you, they know you're a real person.
Yeah, but there's another part of the business, which is we're trying to bring enterprise level technologies down to the small and medium business so
Yeah.
that they can benefit from it
Okay.
without having to have a full-on internal IT architect team, right? So what we do is we'll bring those technologies down to the small and medium business level so that they can take advantage of it, but we'll manage it for them. So now if we're managing it for them, that means if they're having problems with our hardware or anything like that, we need to fix it. So for that, we need to be close.
Okay,
Right.
then you'll send one of your guys there.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what's the difference between hiring someone off, let's say, LinkedIn, who's an IT independent contractor, and hiring you?
Well, when they work with my company, they're working with hundreds of engineers that we can leverage. So a big difference is a company will go out and they'll hire a systems engineer, for
Right,
example. And
right.
that systems engineers, maybe they're very good at working with servers and laptops and desktops. But what if they have a cloud project? What if they have a networking project? What if they have an SD-WAN project, an IoT project, all those things?
You
If
need
they work with us,
multiple people.
if they work with us, they have a cloud project, they're getting a cloud architect. And they get it for a fraction of the price because we already have them waiting in the wings
Online?
ready to go.
Oh, ready to go.
It can be sometimes up to half the price by using our cloud architect versus trying to go out and find their own. It's the same with the systems engineer. If they have a systems engineer, it's far more expensive to do that
Yeah.
than it is to outsource IT operations to us.
Okay.
Even if they have a systems engineer, being able to leverage us on top of that to be able to help support
Of
and
course.
and enhance that system engineer's capabilities, that's beneficial too.
And they don't have to keep you forever.
Right, yeah.
I mean, they could.
They could, and that's one of the
they
nice things. We can really scale, right? So for our customers, they have to have at least 10 computers.
Yeah.
And if they have at least 10 computers, we can scale up to thousands of devices, right? We can basically scale to any level. So if they're
Oh,
small and they expect growth, we can grow with them.
okay.
And even if say they're at 10 and they get a little bit lower, we'll still support them for a while. And even if we get to the point that we can't support them,
Yeah.
we have partnerships with companies and people who do support below 10,
Oh,
right?
I see.
And they're very good too. So
Okay.
we have solutions for just about everybody.
So, as when you started your company, you decided, yes, I can do a medium-sized company. Yes, I can do this. Yes, I can do that. Let me do it. Is that how you came to the decision of starting your company?
So the main reason I came to the decision of starting my company was because as a consultant, my background's in engineering, which is a very technical role. And typically what happens with engineers is they stay in the engineering role no matter what.
Right.
What started happening with me was I went to these different companies and I started leaking out of the engineer role and I started doing project management, a little bit of CIO work. And before I knew it, I was pitching projects, leading projects, doing negotiations on prices with vendors, contract negotiations.
Oh, you touch on all facets
everything.
of the business.
So I started doing everything and I thought to myself, why don't I make a company and bring this to more people instead of doing this on contracts? Because I can really help a lot of different businesses here as opposed to just sticking with, one at a time.
Oh, yeah, that makes total sense because you brought to the table all these other things you did for other companies as a single independent contractor.
Yeah.
Okay. And your market is mostly San Francisco?
So we actually work nationally and internationally, but it really depends on the type of project.
Okay.
If they need hands-on support,
Yeah.
they need to be in the United States. Maybe we could get away with Canada. But if they want consulting and they want us to help them get their prices lower, say they're working on a big contract with Salesforce or Cisco or Palo Alto or HP or any of those big vendors, we can help get those prices lower and help with the consulting once they buy the product. Now that we can do internationally. But if they need hands-on support, very difficult to do internationally.
You'll send someone, a real person.
Yeah, so if they need a real person, we'd have to partner with an international organization. It would be difficult for us to have the internal person to do that because we'd have to say, for example, they're in Singapore. We have to fly them from the United States to Singapore. And by the time they get there and they're able to fix whatever the problem is, the problem's been there for so long, it's just not worth it, right? So
yeah, so like when I say maybe locally US, this way if it's in Denver, it's easy to fly someone in a couple hours.
Yeah, and we have engineers all over the United States. So we have engineers already who can probably support whatever region they're in.
Yeah.
They just have to have the appropriate size, right?
Yeah.
If they have the right size, because the kind of support and consulting we provide, it's not our goal is not to be their lowest bidder, it's to be their best support.
Okay, and also even if the person lives in San Francisco, they can spend a couple days there of the week, then come back to their family for the remaining 5 days.
Yeah, and if they want to do that, they can do that. And even if they wanted to do a national contract where they're at a customer's location for 6 months, we'll fly them home every weekend. I mean, we're fine with that. So we try and make sure that the engineer really enjoys working for us.
Oh, your company must have a frequent flyer. Did you start a frequent flyer thing for
No,
your
I didn't.
engineers?
What is that?
I mean, like you collect miles and then
frequent flyer.
Yeah. So you give those miles to your engineers.
Yeah, just about every institutional advantage we can take for travel, we have it.
Oh, good.
Just in case,
It accumulates on your company credit card.
Yeah, and a lot of time I just give it to the engineers. They're the ones that are flying. So
yeah, it's a business expense for you and for them too maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, and then you probably have a secretary take care of accommodation and so on.
And with a lot of that, I still make sure that I still have my hands. We have a little bit of an advantage in that we're still small enough that I have my hands in a little bit of everything, but we're large enough that we can do just about anything. So
good.
Even when it comes to the accommodations,
because you traveled yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even when it comes to the accommodations for the engineer, I at least look it over. I make sure that it's good to go. And if they have problems, I really want them to voice it because I've been in that situation where I got shipped across the country and I had to live in a hotel that was not so good in a not so good part of town, and horror stories. So I don't want the engineers to be in that situation, right? So
You put them in comfortable
we put them
places.
in good places. We get them a rental car, all that good stuff.
Oh, good. You learned from your own
Yeah,
experience.
yeah.
What made you decide to settle in the Bay Area?
Well, actually, I grew up here, so my
Oh,
whole journey is started here,
and
and
then you decided this is where gonna be my headquarters.
yeah. So I got the itch to do a little bit of traveling, and I got the chops to work in networking. So
Yeah,
I thought, why don't I just start doing networking contracts for countries around the
and have my
country?
headquarter here.
Yeah, and then I got to travel all over the place, and I lived on a relatively low budget because I knew I wanted to build for the future. So I traveled around, I built my skills, and there I am.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
good. Were you were you you were like a contractor for a few years?
Mhm.
Does a contractor use most of the stuff they learn in engineering schools?
The interesting thing about what you learn with engineering is, for example, I don't have a college degree. I did self-study, and I did self-study for all the certifications.
Uh huh.
Over the course of 2 years, I got
And you
something
took
like
all the
13.
tests.
Yeah, I took all the tests. Actually, I failed the first test. I was a really good test taker when I was a kid. And that was when I knew, look, you gotta, if you want to be an engineer, you got a clue, and you really got to pay attention. You can't just sort of skim the book and
And
read a
think
couple articles
it's
and
not
think
gonna
you got
be.
it,
It's
right?
not like Facebook.
But to get back to your question, you may not use everything that you learn in
Yeah.
the book,
Yeah.
but you're still learning concepts that are going to be related, right?
Okay.
So you may learn about, for example, a way to introduce better speed on a certain type of switch or a
Yeah.
certain type of router or on your wireless, and it may not be effective at that time, but later on, as you gain more skills, you may be able to throw that technology on top of another technology that does work. And it's not in the book to do it that way, but you can do it that way. And now you have a unique blend, right? You have a
Yeah.
unique blend that you can provide your customers, which makes you more valuable.
And the industry, like you said, is changing, so you have to keep up to date with the new softwares
Yeah.
coming up.
So this is what we see happening in tech and what we see happening basically everywhere,
Yeah.
right? Um, Technology gets exponentially more complicated. So people have to become more and more experts on specific technologies. It's very hard to be an expert. I
Oh,
don't think
of
there's
course.
anyone who's an expert on anything right now, which is part of why we have so many engineers. But what you're seeing is people being just absolute experts in one little thing. But if you
Mm-hmm.
go outside of that, it's very difficult for them, right? Because there's just not enough hours in the day to study for everything. So what we're seeing is hyper specialization, which is good, but that's part of why automation's coming into the picture, because these engineers they're focusing on one specific thing. They need the easy stuff automated for them,
Oh.
right? They need the easy stuff to just work. And the workloads of engineers is getting nuts. I mean, the demand for engineers is crazy. It's for us to get a good engineer,
Yeah.
you really have to roll out the red carpet. I mean, and it doesn't. You can be Google. You still have to roll out the red carpet because these guys they're so
They're in
competent.
demand.
They have such a unique skill set. There's so much work out there that they can more or less ask for anything that they want. I mean, if an engineer is very good at negotiating and they have a unique skill set, they can do whatever they want. I mean, really.
Oh, so on top of that, you have to be competitive.
You have to be competitive. You have to be competitive. And what I found with a lot of engineers is they really want to improve their skill set, which I
Oh.
love. I mean, for me, if I'm
For
going to hire an
you
engineer,
want to improve yourself.
I want them to want to improve themselves because the whole company lives on the cutting edge of technologies. So
Wow.
if they're not willing to continue to learn, it's very difficult for them to stay on the
They
cutting
have
edge,
to.
right?
They have to.
So for us, it's a win-win. We
Okay.
keep them hyper competent on those technologies, and they want to learn those technologies. They see it as one of the most rewarding things for their career, and
Yeah.
they're probably right.
So yeah, you talk to them and you say, what do you think is a new trend? And they will tell you, and you will implement that because you're no longer on the trench yourself, right?
Right.
So they tell you, hey, look what's happening out there. They're moving on to this new software. Look into it.
And you want to check their excitement level when they're talking about it too, and make sure that it's authentic because,
Yeah.
like I said, it's impossible to work on everything.
Yeah.
So they may talk about a technology, or I may ask them about a technology. They haven't worked on it.
Yeah.
But if they're very excited about it and it's clear they want to
Look
work on that
into it,
technology
yeah.
and learn about it, still great. I mean, no complaints there.
You have to agree to it too. I
Yeah.
mean, that you want to learn it yourself, right? Or
Yeah.
market it.
I have to learn it at a high level, right? So like I understand SD-WAN and those different technologies pretty well, but if I have to go in there and
Google something.
well, if I have to go in there and enter commands into the command line interface and I have to get to that hyper technical work, I have to look it up. Whereas my engineers, they don't have to look it up.
They know it.
They have it memorized because they love to work on the technology, and I love that. So
That's good. So basically, you heard about it, you understand it, but because they are specialists, then they can do it all day long and without blinking.
and this is something I noticed when I was an engineer. It's
Yeah.
very difficult to explain to stakeholders in a company, so say executive level people. They're not engineers, but you're talking to them about different routing protocols and things. You know, you're saying
They
talk
don't wanna hear
BGP, OSPF, EIGRP. They just, you know, they start falling asleep.
They don't know.
So part of my job is to be the bridge, right? Because the engineer, they're so focused on studying that stuff, it's impossible for them to not also speak in that way.
Wow.
So it's impossible for them to speak in a way that the executive can understand.
Okay.
So I have to speak in the way
You
that
are the spokesman.
so I can, because I can do both, right?
Oh.
So
So yeah, so you'll be able to present the solution to the executive in understandable manner, while the engineer that you send is able to actually understand the software.
yeah, and it should be said too that, you know, the things pushing for this technology, these types of technologies, automation, SD-WAN, things like that,
Yeah.
it's not just to make quality of life better, although it does do that for the people working there, and it is a smoother transition. It saves a boatload of money.
Oh.
I mean, the average customer who converts to one of these cutting edge technologies that we have, they typically cut their expenses on whatever that area of technology is by anywhere from 40 to 70%.
Oh my God!
Which is
So it's
insane.
an easy sale for you.
Yeah, it's an easy sale. The real thing is, again, it comes back to trust. They have to trust that I'm going to get them the good
true,
deal.
that they will save money.
Well, right, that they're going to save money, that my firm's the right firm to do it, that I'm going to get them a good deal, and if something goes wrong, we'll be accountable. Because when it comes to implementing technologies like these, customers never like to hear this, but things go wrong sometimes. I mean, not a lot, but things go wrong sometimes.
You gotta fix it.
The key is making sure that the mistake you make is correctable.
Okay. Okay, so it's a constant dialogue.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to make sure it did work for them, not only for saving the 40 to 70%, but also actually the implementation.
Yeah, because the cost savings is a big deal, and that's what pushes the project forward to begin with.
Yeah.
But if using that technology is a nightmare, a year, 2 years, 3 years
They're
down the
gonna call
road,
you.
they forget they saved all the money, right?
Oh.
Because, and why would they stick with the technology if it's driving them nuts just because they saved money?
Oh, yeah.
People want both. I mean, if you're going to introduce something new, it has to be way more effective in terms of price, and it has to be way easier, because making migrations it's not easy.
Okay. So, yeah, so it's also you are the responsible person for making the decision that this is the right thing to implement in that particular.
We have our top recommendations, but we
Yeah.
always want our customer to have an understanding, at least at a high level, of what it is that we're installing, so that
3 months trial kind of thing.
yeah, a proof of concept. So we want them to have some level of understanding of what it is, and we want them to also help with the decision, because they typically, most companies want about a 3-year agreement on technologies like these. So if you install something, they're married to it for about 3 years.
Okay.
So if they're married to it for 3 years, they'd better also be on board with making that decision. And so
and they gotta be happy.
yeah, and we're not much of a strong arming type of like, we don't have any traditional salespeople. Most of the sales
It's you,
calls is
yeah, it's you.
yeah, we just call out and we just try and help them how we can and show that we know what we're talking about and we can provide value, and we more or less let them make the decision on whether or not they want to bring us on board.
Yeah, and you can also provide the project manager for them in case they need
Take the
one.
whole project basically off their hands, so they get
Oh,
the consistent updates, right? So
okay,
they
okay.
can understand what's going
So
on.
you're the project manager for them.
And that's another scalability question, right? Because we can either just help them with getting the price down or just help them with the consultation, or we can take on the whole project. So
That's another
depends on the
contract.
customer. Hmm.
Is okay. So I think I understand a little bit better what you do
That's great.
because meeting like just 5 minutes
Yeah.
in a loud place, I don't
Yeah.
understand. But I'm glad I found out how new technology IT company work because they all try to keep up with the competitor.
Yeah.
And
You got to be sure those guys aren't just all talk.
yeah, you gotta say, oh, this person present itself as an IT professional that has maybe 30 years experience, but
Right.
will they be able to deliver the latest technology? That is the question.
Yeah.
That is a
A
question.
lot of talk, not a lot of walking.
Okay. So I think I understand very much, I mean, a lot better what you do. And do you cover all industries?
Under the IT umbrella,
Mm.
yeah, we can work with. It'll depend on with government because some government entities you need a contract. Like
Okay.
for example, in Texas, I forget the name of the contract, but you need a specific contract.
Okay.
It takes over a year to process that contract.
Oh my God.
So
Board of directors, whatever.
yeah, so if there's a limitation like that where we need
It's
to get
too
government
complicated.
approval, and we're not afraid of doing it, but we need to have, there needs to be a significant carrot to get over that hump.
I
It's
know,
like,
because
we-
there's different bidders. Is that what it is?
yeah, and then even if you get the contract, that's right. You go to the government and you're bidding against a bunch of other entities, and we're not local to Texas,
Oh,
for example.
okay.
So who knows? There's all kinds of little nuances to entering a market like that you just don't know about. So other than that, we work with just about anything. The most customers we have right now are in finance, retail, law, advertising and marketing,
Okay.
medical services, and construction.
Okay. No, because I read this week that sometimes the bidder gives the lowest price, but then they extend the project saying that it's going to take another 3 years to complete.
We call those the IT tyrants, right? It's once they get in the door, they're
They're going to
right.
they're
They're
going to add on.
they're asking you for $1 every time you turn around.
Okay,
right, or
okay.
worst case
So
scenario.
they turn out not to be the lowest bidder.
Right. Worst case scenario, they come in, they break things on purpose that you then have to. It's like the nightmare mechanics scenario. It's like
Okay.
almost the exact same thing.
So never bid for the lowest bidder?
Well, it can depend, but if you're gonna go with the lowest bidder, you really have to do your homework. I mean,
Okay.
typically speaking in IT, you get what you pay for, right? So
That's true because it was not about an IT project, it was about doing the extend subway. It was supposed to be finished in
Right.
2016. Now that you're talking about another 2 years, and those were the lowest bidders, but then they add on 3 years to their bid.
yeah,
It happens.
again, you gotta do your homework, right? You have to be accountable to what it is that they're doing, making sure that you can pivot from what they're doing. And it's
Yeah.
no different in IT. If someone wants to install a system
Yeah.
at your company,
Yeah.
you want to make sure that you can pivot from that system at some point, and that they don't just have you, right?
Okay.
Because if they own the entire thing and you don't really trust them that well, if they own your IT, they own your business, really, because no companies today function without IT.
Of
It's like
course.
even a dentist, right? They're setting up their billing for when customers come in for cleanings and whatever
Okay.
else,
Okay.
but all that's assuming that their tech is working. So if their tech's not working, even if they still manage to service their customers, they can't charge more all of a sudden. They can't say, sorry, customer, I got to charge double because my IT's not working,
Okay.
right? So if someone owns your IT, they own your business. So you got to have a very, very, very high trust level with that individual.
Okay. And what percentage of people then, since it's high trust level, is referrals? I mean, they
A lot.
trust a lot. Is
Yeah,
referral.
a
They
lot.
say, "Oh, I did business with William Max, and he delivered."
Yep. Yeah, so a lot of it's referrals. We're trying to break that trend a little bit by getting more into sales and marketing.
Yeah.
But like I said, we don't have a traditional sales team, so it's mostly marketing. And then I'm kind of talking to them, trying to see if I can figure out how to send the message. And what I'm finding really is it's counterintuitive, but when you go on these calls with these people, just give them everything, more or less. I mean, you know, if you're in a half-hour introductory call or an hour introductory call, you know they're interested in SD-WAN, for example.
Yeah.
I just tell them everything I can tell them about SD-WAN in a way that'll help them over the course of the hour.
Yeah.
Because I figure it's going to go one of two ways, right? 3 ways. One is they're going to try and do it on their own. They're going to realize, okay, that guy knew what he was talking about. We're trying to do what he said, but there's nuances because we don't have the experience in doing this. Let's get him.
Oh, okay.
The second way is they just say, this guy was so trusting and so helpful with us. We feel like we can reciprocate.
Okay.
So then they bring you in. And then the third way is they don't do the project. But if they don't do the project, after you were very honest about what the project will contain, the benefits, the risks, all those other things, in the long run, they were never going to do the project. Because even if you got them to do the project, they probably wouldn't have been happy with it. So I figured just tell them, right? You know, don't do that with a competitor, for example. But if you're on a call with a potential customer, just try and help them and then see where it goes. That's the way I think is to bridge the trust outside of a referral.
So your tagline should be MaxNetflow, the tagline, the trusted company kind of thing.
Yeah, we could do that.
If you do
trusted IT, yeah.
The trusted IT. Yeah, that would work.
You know, what's interesting with that, though, is kind of like when you offer something for free, people go, why is it for free? They get suspicious, right? And I feel like it's the same way if you just open up the conversation with trust. You're immediately thinking, what's this guy want?
Oh,
right?
You want...
Maybe, I don't know.
You want higher...
yeah, or they're trying to artificially introduce trust or something. For me, it would make me skeptical. If someone came in and said, Will, you can trust me. It was the first time I met him. I'd be like, no, I can't. Go away.
Show me, yeah.
Completely be turned off by that. So I don't want to do that either. And I also don't want to do the hard sell.
Okay.
But maybe, you know, there's an element of that maybe is you just have to be authentic on those sales calls.
Yeah, and if someone asks for a referral, you can always provide it, something like that.
And we basically always take referrals. We've managed to get a few customers outside of referrals, and it wasn't through just having the website up or anything like that. It was through targeted emails and calling and things like that. But, you know, we just get them on the phone and tell them everything we can to be helpful and move from there.
Yeah, but if they say, oh, can you refer me to a customer who's happy with you, you can do that too.
Oh, yeah. We got quite a few in the United States, especially in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Who can say, yeah, he did his job.
WebCore Builders would be one.
Yeah. Which company?
WebCore Builders. They're the ones building all the skyscrapers around here. So
really?
They have pretty good name recognition here in the Bay Area because everyone sees their their logo on the cranes and all that.
Yeah.
So that's a common one that we use. We also worked with Comcast and.
Those are big corporations.
Yeah, and we're working internationally with some other companies. So.
I'm happy you moved up so good with big corporation because you're still young, you know.
Yeah. And actually, we have the opposite problem in that. Almost all of our customers at the beginning were big companies. We didn't have any small ones. And I thought, you know, I'd really like to get into that market as well. So we started offering new services to get into that market too. Because people hear big companies and they think that's the dream.
That's way too big for them.
Well, I think really what you want is you want a little bit of everything. You want some balance.
Okay. Sounds good. So get to know you a little bit better as a person and your company. I do appreciate you showing up.
Sure. My pleasure.
And thank you very much. Hope to see you again one day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much for being here.